see some faces out there. Welcome everybody to your Wellness 360 workshop. Excited to be here with you for this event. By the way, if it's your first time joining us for a Wellness 360 workshop, which I think it is maybe for a few of you, a special warm welcome to you. Today, we're all about supporting you in applying the Wellness 360 system, the unique holistic wellness system we teach here at the IAWP to you guys, our coaches in training, so that you can create your own wellness transformations and then go on to support others to do the same. And really the purpose of the call is to understand the Wellness 360 system, what it is, how it works, apply it to your own life. And we do all this through our workshop style format, which is really a specific format we teach here at the IAWP, so that you can share your own message through wellness workshops. So the whole point is during a workshop, we're not talking heads or gurus up here on a stage. We're really here to be guides for you on your own journey, which is why we take little breaks throughout. If you've been with us before, we like to pop back to you guys in the class here and hear some thoughts that are coming through from you. And the whole idea is for you to kind of take little steps throughout the workshop so that by the end you have some action steps to move forward, okay? And keep in mind, sometimes our workshops are shared both inside the community and sometimes outside the other community so that others can kind of get a sneak peek into how it is over here inside our community. I'm going to quickly share my screen just before we dive in too far. So let me do that. Welcome to those of you just popping on. See some more faces out there. Okay, and hopefully you guys can see my live workshop screen. Welcome to your Wellness 360 live workshop. We're just gonna do kind of a quick overview here before we get too far. So give me 1 second. I lost you guys in the process and I wanna find my little video of all of you. Okay, you guys can see my screen out there? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right, so Wellness 360. It's based on the idea that true wellness is not a quick fix, right? It doesn't come from a magic pill or some fad diet. It's not something you just achieve overnight. It's really a holistic approach to your health and well-being, which you know by now. And the holistic path to wellness isn't some straight line to a destination. It's really a circle. It's a circle around your entire being. And that's what Wellness 360 is here to do, guide you on this. It's really a revolutionary approach to health and wellness that you're not going to find anywhere else, and it's based on this proven system that connects these 12 elements of your life and allows you to not look at them in buckets, but to see the interconnection really with a 3-level system, right? And so it's truly a paradigm shift. You probably have seen our Wellness 360 wheel before. It's up there on the screen. Those are the 12 elements, but I want to share with you that there's 3 different layers to Wellness 360, right? There's the external layer, and that's kind of the most basic meaning of the element. And then there's the internal layer where we take it kind of one step further. And then there's what we call the symbolic layer, right? And they all play a role with each element and they all can kind of interact with all the elements out there. So we're going to be talking today about one specific element, the element of finances. And we're going to walk through the 3 layers that make up this element. And to guide us on this journey today, we have a special guest joining us, Danielle Luipersbeck. Hey, Danielle out there.
Hi.
You didn't know I was going to pop your face big up on the screen. Danielle is not only an IAWP Certified Wellness Coach, she's a Director of Admissions here at the IAWP. She's the founder of Nourish Life Now. She's a certified personal trainer and the founder of the Food Freedom Plan. And you guys, after Danielle was in corporate for 20 years and she had a successful career, but she also became exhausted, stressed out, tired, and 50 pounds overweight, she says. And she knew something really needed to change for her. And that's when Danielle went on her own wellness journey and transformed her life and ultimately became a wellness coach and started Nourish Life Now, her coaching practice, where she's really focused on helping women tame their chaotic schedules to focus in on their health and wellness and follow their own passions and dreams. Like I said, she's also the Director of Missions here at IAWP, and she has a passion for helping people to embark on their new career paths and finding their purpose, as well as understanding the finances element of Wellness 360 and how money kind of plays a role in going for our goals and dreams and how it impacts our well-being, which is why we're talking with Danielle today. So thank you, Danielle, for being here. Fun to see you out there.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, before we dive into some of the things I know you want to share today, I just want to kind of get us all jump started and touch in on this word finances, because in a way it's a loaded word, right? When I was posting for this call, I was kind of thinking about that. When we think of finances, we think of money. Sometimes there's a certain energy to it. So I'm curious, when you think of the word finances, what comes to mind for you right away? Is it about making money? Is it about hard work? Is it about passion? Is it about purpose? Is it about security? Is it about struggle? What's kind of the first thing that comes to mind as you think about it? And if you want to go ahead and post in the chat, there'll be a fun way to get us started. And we're going to do this throughout our workshop together. And as we're waiting to see what comes to mind for you guys and you post in the chat, go ahead and do that now. I will give you a heads up that at the end of this call, we're going to take one person live on mic here to share with us kind of what their breakthrough was on this call, or something that came through for them, or an action step they're going to take next. And so just to give you a heads up on that, because you might be thinking about it. Kristen says security definitely comes to mind. Shelly says time, freedom, and security. Very cool. Kimberly says making money, security, savings, and how to build more. Christina says same for her, security and comfort. Yeah, those are all really good, good points. And I'm also curious to kind of think about, as you guys think about finances initially, does it have a positive impact on your health, or a negative one, or a neutral? Like, as you think about that Wellness 360 wheel that we saw earlier, how do you see it impacting other areas of your life right now? And just kind of think about that. Maybe it's not playing as much of a role. Maybe you do feel it's impacting. And go ahead, you can share that in the chat as well as we're going along. Mary says freedom and time, security and contribution. Beth agrees with security. She's lucky not to be in debt apart from her mortgage, and debt would sit really uncomfortable with her. So that's something important to her. Let's see here. Charlene says family contribution. Very good. All right, guys. Well, thanks for kind of chatting. And, I'll just say, when you're working on living a life full of health and wellness, finances isn't always the first thing that comes to mind, right? But when it comes to true wellness and a holistic approach, you really do have to look at all aspects of your life, and each component of your life experience affects all the other areas, right? Nothing really exists in isolation. And so finances might not be the first thing you think of, but it actually is. It is important. It's something you want to include in a discussion as you're talking about, wellness from a 360 perspective, because it does have a huge impact on our physical and mental health. And it also has to do a lot with our own kind of relationship with money. And sometimes that relationship is deeper than just like our budgets or our financial investments or even our spending habits. It can bring up stress for us. It kind of has, like I said earlier, its own energy that can carry a certain weight and kind of affect us too. So it's an important piece to talk about. And on the external layer of the element, right, of finances, because again, we look at all three layers. The first layer really simply just represents the most basic idea of finance, which is taking care of our basic financial needs, right? And the question is, on a day-to-day basis, are you provided for, right? And that's really what it means on this first level. And the other thing is, even if your basic needs are provided for on this first level, things can still be out of balance, right? Maybe you feel provided for, but you still have a fear about the future, or that you won't be provided for, say, tomorrow or the next day, right? So whether or not you feel balanced on this first level of finances can impact just your own mindset and kind of stress and things like that. So let's just pop it back to you guys real quick. I'm curious, as you think about finances, and sometimes we do this little rating scale of 1 to 10. Rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. How much do you see finances impacting the other elements for you? Is as you think of Wellness 360, is finances having a big impact on everything else in the wheel? Is it kind of in between? Is it sort of out of the picture right now? A 10 is it's having a big impact, let's say, right? And a 1 is kind of like, no, not as much. Christina says it's a 10 for her right now. Jenna's an 8. Kristen McGrath is a 9 or a 10. Kristen earlier was saying finances can be out of balance for her, especially recently, and she tends to worry about money often, right? And sometimes this can stem from growing up in a family where frequently discussed money issues. Yeah, absolutely. That's a big part. Heather, finances are huge, 9. Kimberly, 8. Laura, 8. Shelly, 7. So everybody's seeing the impact, right? It's there. Well, thanks for sharing a little bit about where you guys are to get us started. I know more of you are sharing as well, but Danielle, let's pop over to you. I know you have some thoughts about this first layer of finances. I'm curious to hear what's coming up for you.
Sure, thank you. So when we talk about this external layer and our basic needs being met, I think the key word is basics. And too many times things become convoluted, they become very complex because we forget about the very basic layer. And some of those basic things, the way that when security is what I would think of when I think of finances. That was my background of how I grew up, the man that I married, very secure and stable. So that's how I associate finances. But when I think about that, and when that element starts to get out of balance for me and some sort of fear is created, like what we're all experiencing now based on, your evaluation of on that scale of 10, it's a very real fear that we have for our future right now. So the one way that I gain, and my biggest tip here to gain strength in this, is I think about a time when I was at the very bare minimum basics. And for many of us, if we're older, that was in our 20s. It may have been, for me, some examples I had was when I was 20, I had to roll pennies just to buy food at the grocery store. I mean, that's as basic as you can get, but it helps me remember that I was a survivor during that time. I had to be humble. I had to be creative. I had to really go back to our ancestral instinct, which is hunter and gatherers, really looking to be creative for where these opportunities are. That was the food piece of the basic. The shelter for me was we lived in a very old farmhouse one time, and the farmhouse was incredibly drafty, but I did have shelter. At night I would pull a blanket up to my nose just to keep my nose from freezing, but I had the very basic need at that time. Another example was this same farmhouse for us did not have water that came directly into the house from a utility system, and we had to get water from a spring, and I had to boil water. But again, I had my basic needs met, and I was still happy during that time. So I think if we can look back to those times when we didn't have as much, and where we still survived, where we were still resilient, then that can give us the strength, the power, and the encouragement so that the fear that we're feeling right now, we know we're going to get through it. It's only temporary. It may get worse in the process, but there was a time when you came through something very difficult and very challenging, and you lived to survive it.
Yeah. Wow, that's powerful, Danielle. I didn't know what you were going to say, and I just think that resilient piece is really huge. And I think it goes to show you that no matter what situation, you will be provided for, right? You don't always know how that's going to show up, but it's interesting to hear how your story and the idea of kind of like thinking back to times that were maybe more challenging than even right now. And maybe it wasn't finances for you. Maybe it was a whole different area of your life where maybe finances was okay, but everything else was kind of in crisis, right? If you can't think of a time where that financial security was in a different place for you. I think what Danielle's trying to say is we've been through challenges before. And sometimes when we're going through them again, we forget we have that resiliency, we have that experience. And really, I'll say, you guys were made for this. You were made for times like this because you've been through challenges and struggles. And that's what's really brought you here today on this journey to become a wellness coach, right? And your passion that's coming through. So yeah, it's hard when you're in the moment, isn't it, Danielle? But I love your idea of kind of like, okay, I've been here before in some shape, form, or in some way before.
Yeah, exactly. And I think when we talk about getting back to the basics, if you think about great sports teams who are maybe on this downward slide, and the coach Vince Lombardi was famous for this, to bringing people back to a very basic place where you start at the beginnings, you start at your foundations, and then you work your way back up again. It may mean that you have to sit down with your finances and really map out what are the basic elements for you that will give you security, and you prioritize those. And then everything else you just have to forget about for whatever that means at the moment. But if you can give yourself a sense of security in those basic needs, and you're very real with yourself as to what's going on with your money and how you're making it work for you, which that'll be a second point when we talk about the internal layer. But if you write it down, you are real with where your money's at, what's working, what's not, what your basic needs are, you can feel more in control of that process and be able to hone in on that strength and that remembrance of when you got through something difficult in the past.
This is really resonating what you're saying, because what I like about what you're saying is, you know, oftentimes we have these fears about our financial security. Some of them might be very real. Some of them might be more subconscious, as some of you shared, like things from our past, right? They might be all kind of getting mixed and jumbled together and showing up in our reality. And then we just try to push through. We kind of continue on, and we don't really address the fear. We don't look at it. We're just like, okay, I got to go to the day-to-day. I got to work harder. I got to just, you know, get through this time right now. And it's like still running in the background. Does anybody relate to that? Yeah. I see some heads nodding out there. It's like, it's there, but we haven't taken the time to really look at it. And what Danielle's saying is like, sit down with it. It's kind of like we always say, you know, kind of feel the fear, do it anyway. Feel the fear with your finances. Like, who, you know, there's always that thing where you're like, ew, I don't really want to look at, you know, my bank account and kind of look at everything. But it's also empowering to do that. And what Danielle's saying, I think too, is like, it comes through, you look at it and you say, okay, what is the reality here? Right? And that kind of shifts you out of fear to really, what is the reality? You might uncover that some of the things you were worried about are not really true. And maybe some of them are, but then it's coming from an empowered place. Like you said, you can gain more control by saying, what can I do next? What can I do right now? And maybe you have to make some simple shifts and changes. But I always like to kind of have, you know, there's plan A, you know, this is the growth plan, all the wonderful things you want to do. But there's also, you can look at it and say, what's plan B right now? If I had to be in basic need and survival mode, what do I really need right now? And I can still hold that bigger vision for myself.
And we also go through that process with our clients when we coach with them, because we really have to uncover and peel back the layers to be able to get to that true core issue. And it's the same thing with our finances. There is a core driver that drives our behavior around finances. And if we can be real with what that is, even if it's not pretty, even if it's uncomfortable, at least we understand what that driver is, and then we can address it.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Heather's saying she's kind of like, I think, raising hand in a good way. She's in healthcare right now. She can't wait to make a shift from being in healthcare to being a full-time wellness coach and having more flexibility, right? So you don't sit there now and say, oh my gosh, I can't be a wellness coach. I can't go for my vision because I'm over here. You're like, okay, this is my reality and I'm working toward this too. And it's kind of the same thing like what you're saying with finances.
And the other piece is, if you're in a season where your coaching business is not exactly where you want it to be, you're getting a lot of pushback from clients who are not really ready to invest because they have the fear around doing that, there are other ways that you can find to supplement this. It might supplement your career right now. It might not be what you want to do at the time, but you have to look long term. This is just a season that we're going through right now. And it may mean that you have to humble yourself to do work that you don't necessarily want to do to get to this, you know, grander plan. I don't recommend anyone do what I'm going to share with you that I've done. It's nothing crazy, Suzanne, so don't worry. But, you know, but at one time, my husband and I would go around and gather scrap metal and take it to the recycling facility. I have cleaned houses on a construction site. You know, I think about these, you know, crazy things that I've done in conjunction with still working my business, because it's what was called of at that time. But I had to humble myself many times to go, okay, am I really going to get scrap metal from someone's house to go to the recycling facility? But I wanted to coach. I wanted this freedom more than the embarrassment or humbling myself to do that, you know, was presenting that fear or self-doubt or that, you know, emotional piece that wouldn't let me get past it. I had to get, if I wanted my coaching business, I wanted to be where I was sitting at today, you know, being at home with my daughter, having freedom of schedule and feeling somewhat financially secure right now. Those are things I've had to do in the past.
Yeah. I love that, because sometimes we get so stuck in, we want the vision so bad that we're not willing to do other things that don't align completely with the vision because we don't think they align, when the reality is we don't ever really know all the steps on our journey. I mean, I look back at some of the careers and different things that I've done. And at the time I thought, I can't stand this. This has nothing to do with my path. And turn around 10, 20 years later, oh my gosh, that was such a big part of my journey to get to where I am. So you don't always know in the moment, and you can still keep the big vision. I love what you're saying. Let's pop back to you guys before we move on. Just take a minute to kind of jot one thing down that maybe is coming up for you as you think about this external layer of finances here in Wellness 360. What's one thing that you might do to make a shift on this layer for yourself? Something that might be coming to mind, maybe an example from what Danielle shared, or something else that's just coming through for you. This is a good time now to create a little action step for yourself, and you can go ahead, you can share it in the chat if you want, and let us know what you're going to do to take action on the external layer. We'll just wait a moment to see if anybody wants to share. Kristen says she really likes the basic elements that will give security. Focus on those for sure. Yeah. Start there, right? Beth actually has worried less about it by stepping down to 4 days per week to concentrating on her coaching certificate, right? So yeah, you look at the whole picture, you're like, wow, what can I do? Maybe I can go to 4 days a week instead of 5 days at work. I still have enough income here to provide for my security so I can work toward growth, which I think that's a very interesting thing. Not everybody can do that. But you could have said, oh, I have no time for my coaching practice and I need my job to provide my basic needs, so I'm going to be trapped forever. Instead, you said, how can I get creative? So that's amazing. Charlene's been dedicating more time for her learning. Yeah. Right. So you do what you're doing now, but you're like, I'm working toward my future. I'm in my training program. And as you go through your training step by step, you learn how to boost your finances and take those steps, but it's a step-by-step process. Janice tends to avoid knowing her actual state of finances. Yep. Great at making a budget initially, but not always focusing on it month to month. This would be a good tangible step to feel comfortable and know where you might need to supplement. Yeah. Right? Because if you truly want to be a wellness coach, you're actually moving into being a business owner in many cases. Yeah, there's different career paths, but you're taking control of your own career. And that means you also have to wear a business hat, right? And if you want to be successful, you have to also know about your money and your finances. So this might be a little uncomfortable, but this is a great time to start practicing it right now, because it's something that if you haven't done in the past, it's something you're going to have to do if you want to run a practice, right? Denise is going to work to compress work week, no changes financially. Heather is agreeing with everything we're saying. So true. Well, thanks for sharing, everybody. Danielle, let's pop back to you. I want to first say just a little bit about the internal layer. As we kind of move finances to the inside, what is it all about? Well, finances on the internal layer really represents our relationship with money and more our beliefs. So not so much, where are we today with our finances and our budget and our security, but like, regardless of where we are, what are our beliefs, right? And this really includes our own upbringing, how it helped to shape the beliefs that you might hold today about money, because your relationship with money really, it starts at a young age, from what you see, what you hear, what you experience, what you're being taught about money, right? And this isn't about blaming anybody for what they said or how they explained it to you or how things were in your childhood. It's just more of an awareness. And money is really neither good or bad. Just keep that in mind. It's a source of energy that can be used for good or bad, right? Which I think sometimes can confuse us. It can confuse our subconscious, right? Because oftentimes we see through movies, through media, how money is used in a negative way. Therefore, programming us to think like, oh, even though I would like to have more freedom with money, money is kind of a bad, right? So there can be a lot caught up in this, and really learning to dive into your own beliefs and take this element to the inside can be a huge impact, and having greater awareness and understanding for yourself. So let's pop over to you guys actually before we pop to Danielle, because I just want to see where you guys are on this internal layer. Just take a minute now to see if you can even remember an early memory of money from your childhood, right? And maybe you already know what it is. Just take a second and maybe you can think of a specific memory, or maybe it's just how you felt about money growing up, right? Did your parents say that money doesn't grow on trees? Did they tell you have to work hard to make money like my parents did? Did you think money was easy to come by, or was it hard to get? Did your parents let you freely go in their wallet to get a few bills to head to get a treat or to go out with your friends? Or did you have to really ask, and it was like, what's this for, right? So this isn't about blaming anybody. Again, it's about bringing awareness to where you might be right now. I'd love to hear from you guys. What was it like for you back in your childhood? Charlene worked at age 14 to save her own money. Definitely work hard to get money was Laura's, no pain, no gain. Yeah, that's a big one, right? This is funny because this morning I was just doing a virtual training lesson with my son for the online learning, and he's learning about idioms, which are, these statements that you make that they don't actually mean what they are. I think that's kind of funny. Money doesn't grow on trees, no pain, no gain. These were kind of some of the ones that we were going over actually. So Jenna says she always has to work for money, including allowance, right? Parents were very hard work, financial security. You had to work hard for it. It wasn't growing on trees, says Christina. Money was a secret, something not discussed, Heather says. I hear you on that one. That's a big one in many families. You have to work to have anything. You have to work hard, Heather says. Frugal, even if you have money, right? You're frugal with it, Mary says. Beth has thought about this a lot. Her parents never worried about it, and she thinks it's taught her to feel that being happy was more important than having money, and you couldn't be both. A lot of more stories out there, guys. Denise started working at 17. Laura was working at 15, Laura at 17. Heather never had an allowance. So all different sorts of experiences, which I think is kind of interesting, right? Everybody's kind of there's some similar experiences because they're become part of our cultures, and then there's some different ones too. Danielle, let's pop back to you. What are your thoughts about this whole internal layer of money?
So what's interesting is my first memory of money was cutting lawns in our neighborhood at 11 to earn an allowance. So for me, that was really instilled, just like many of you, that you have to work hard. Money doesn't grow on trees. You have to be self-sustaining, and you're the one responsible for your income. But I look at money the same way that I view wellness in our lives. It's temporary, it's seasonal, it ebbs and flows. And what I mean by that is it could be that you have great times of abundance of wealth, or you have enough wealth to where you feel very secure. It could be a career change, a divorce, a family member passes, a crazy maintenance project on your house that you have to dip into all of your savings to be able to pay for. But the one thing I've learned in my 46 years is most things are temporary, and money is not immune to that. And so you can either make the decision that it can control you, or you're going to control it as best as you can with what you have to work for. But if we think about money in this way, we will tend to have a better plan. We will tend to be better prepared for those times when money isn't providing security or necessarily paying for all the things that we want it to pay for. And, I think about squirrels as being a great example of this. They know that season is going to change for them. Winter is coming. It's going to be a hard time. So what do? They spend all summer and spring and fall really building up for that time. So if we could learn a little wisdom nugget or nut from squirrels today, that's who I thought could be our best example and coach in this. I think back to my childhood, and my dad was a lieutenant colonel in the military. So yay me, right? A lot of structure, being strict all the time. But one thing that he instilled in me, because I was a female, and if there's male coaches on the call, you'll have a different perspective. But because I was female, he taught me never to depend on anyone else for my financial security. Well, that served me very well in life. And that helped me realize, again, that theme of it's temporary, it's seasonal, but it also helped me feel more in control of my career too, at times when my career would be up at really good times. And especially being in sales and marketing, you have times when your commission is out the roof, and you have other times when you're going, okay, what can we buy at the grocery store this week? But if you see it going downhill in your relationship with money, you can make some changes and be more mindful of that seasonal, temporary space that we live in with money that will help you control the deficit times better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. As you're talking, I was just remembering another one from my parents, which was kind of indirectly related to money, which is my dad loved to say, you never risk a lot for a little. True. And that might be true on some levels, but that also had its other effect where doing something risky, right? Which could be going on a path to start your own career, right? Doing something that wasn't your regular corporate job. trying to create your own path to freedom and money, right? Those things are risky, right? So that was always kind of playing in the back of my head, and that was a real direct relationship to money. So I think it's just important to spend some time on this internal layer, like you're saying, Danielle, so that you can kind of see what's coming through. You can have more control because you're willing to look at it versus, hey, I know my parents said that, but I've never really thought about it, you know? Maybe it's journaling it and really saying, is this really true, you know? And then I think a good piece here too is like, as those subconscious kind of things come through for you, it's also saying, okay, let me look for examples today where this isn't true, where I don't have to make this my story and my path. My parents meant well. They didn't want me to risk a lot for a little. I get that. On the same note, that could hold me back from really ever going for anything in life if I let that be my mantra, right? So how do I find experiences? And it's hard because, again, it's subconscious. You may not want to take risks. I'm not a real risky, adventurous person, like even physically, like with sports or anything like that. So I had to push myself step by step to try little risks and then say, wow, how did that go? Right? How did that feel? What was the outcome? So we don't suddenly shift overnight and say, oh, I'm going to risk everything and it's all going to work out, right? I had to take little steps to prove to myself, right? So whatever the story is for you, you can start shifting that story too by taking small actions and letting yourself see how it's maybe not exactly how you're thinking about it.
And that's one piece, you know, in talking with, I think I stopped counting a couple of years ago when I had spoke to close to 1,000 prospective students coming into the IAWP, but I can tell you 90 to 95% of the incoming students that I speak with, they have a fear surrounding investing money for some of the reasons that you've just talked about, Suzanne, but it's fear and it's self-doubt. So if you can understand, it's not many times the money that is the driving factor for the decisions we make around money, but it's the fear and self-doubt that may come back ultimately to our childhood frame of how we believed about money or what it meant for us. And the sad thing to me is that I can hear the passion on the phone. I can hear that they're going to be a great coach and they have such a big story to share with other people, but they can't get past that fear and self-doubt from their childhood creation, again, of their mindset of money. And they don't step into that purpose and space that they could really be doing a service to others, but also they can feel the passion and purpose that they have for themselves and they're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I know you've had so many conversations over the years with so many people. And, you know, that's why I wanted to bring you on today, because that financial piece, while often hidden, is very real whenever you're going to make a decision and do something new. So whatever it is in your life, right? And for everybody here, whether you had your tuition money lying around or not, it's still an action step to take, right? And fear can still come up no matter what. And what I think is interesting, and we may even share this interview with those of you who are prospective students or who are kind of going on this path right now. And I want to just say that, you know, there's been many students over the years, and this kind of will go into our third step, that actually didn't have the money, right, sitting in the bank account. But because maybe their money mindset was a little bit different, even though they didn't have the money, they had this greater belief, they found a way. They found a way. And maybe they asked a family member to invest in them who they would pay back. Maybe they went out and got a second job for a few months to pay for their tuition. So it's always interesting, I think, how our money mindset can play out regardless of what's in our bank account. That will can always be there to move us forward. And I've always been so moved by people that have had that passion to take that step forward, knowing that this was the career path that they were meant to go on.
And this is a conversation you'll have with your clients as well, or your potential clients when you're speaking with them and that money issue comes up, which it's going to in almost every single call, if it's very similar to the calls that I have with prospective students. And this is kind of out of the wheel, but I'll give you a tip that really, I took a training last year. If you can move away from closing the client into one of your programs and really step into that space of being the doctor, the advisor, the person that's trying to support and serve, then you will better remove yourself from just, you know, getting a new client to really hearing what's behind the money fear. It's always something else that's behind it, driving it. And then that will better allow you to nurture in a very responsible way, an authentic way with your client to help them sign with you, because you can help them see results and transformation. And that's really why we're in this to begin with.
I love that you shared that. I'm sure we could deep dive into this whole area of discovery sessions, because this is a whole topic, guys, and you'll be getting to discovery sessions and how to have these authentic sales conversations with your coaching clients if you haven't yet. But I will tell you, as what you're saying, Danielle, right now, if you don't work on your own money mindset and take a look at your own element of finances, you're going to find that showing up in your discovery sessions, and you're going to bring your own sort of energy to that, where that desperation comes through, that you can't be holding the space, or as we say in the discovery session, stepping into the gap, right? Because if you can work on that for yourself and kind of let that go and really truly be there as the guide, as you're saying, for the person, you get to uncover what's really coming up for them. And you'll find that money can be an issue. It can be a smokescreen to some other fear. And we teach you exactly how to dive into that and be able to have those authentic conversations with people. So I'm glad you mentioned that. And yeah, we could do a whole other call on that, couldn't we? That's very interesting though, but very, really relates to what we're talking about. So before we move on to the third layer, let's just take a minute to kind of reflect on this internal layer, our money mindset. And I'll kind of go back to you guys. What's coming through, right? As you think about maybe some of your own money mindset, what's one thing that you could do to start to shift it? And go ahead, share it in the chat if you'd like. Right? Is it something that Danielle said? Something else coming through for you? Do you want to actually maybe carve out a little space each week to look at your own internal layer here, your own money mindset? Maybe you've been ignoring it too long, right? Or maybe you're like pretty aware of it, but you want to do something else. Maybe you want to practice having conversations about money with family or friends or practice clients or potential clients. What can you do here to kind of make a little small shift here with your own money mindset, as we call it? Let's see if anything's coming through. Well, I take a water break. Heather wants to be more consistent in doing a budget and then using affirmations. Affirmations could be really helpful in helping you to shift, right? Kimberly says she thinks for her something we had in this module was that going down this path as a coach didn't mean I wouldn't make more, or that I did as a software rep. So there was a shift in your own mindset after you read that. Shelly, affirmations, needing to do this more. Yeah, and guys, affirmations definitely can help. I think the other piece though is to really, and you guys have heard me say this before, if you've got some of these beliefs, you know, money doesn't grow on trees, and then you're like, money grows on trees, right? Sometimes we don't believe ourselves, right? So sometimes we have to dive a little bit deeper into kind of the ugly, yucky stuff, which we've talked about in other calls. We're not going to get into too much today, before we can jump to kind of the positive affirmations. So be open to affirmations, but also be open to looking at what looks like not an affirmation, what really is the true belief, what is kind of the negative around it, so that you can have more awareness, understanding, and start to shift that story to what truly is true. And sometimes you'll find it's a middle ground, right? We don't go way over here, but we're like, you know what? Like Danielle said on the first layer, right now, I am provided for. You know, maybe that's the first step. So it's very interesting to kind of go through that process. Mary's facing her money mindset rather than ignoring it. I love that, right? That's what we're talking about today. Reminding herself to ask herself if there's a better way to view her own beliefs around money. Yeah. A lot of other great action steps out there, you guys, that you're taking. I'm not going to read them all. I'm glad that you guys, good things are coming through about what you want to do next. Let's talk about the symbolic layer. This is kind of that ever sort of elusive layer, like what the heck is this all about? That's really this deeper layer of ourselves, right? We can kind of think of it as a symbolic layer or an energetic layer, spiritual layer, whatever kind of comes through to you. But it's really about kind of what the element represents, right? And finances sort of on this symbolic layer to me represents abundance and really a balance of giving and receiving. Now, when you hear the word abundance, there's a lot of thoughts tied up in that word too, because you can hear abundance, And you can think about wealth or the amount of money you have in your bank account. Sometimes that comes to mind. But what I want to talk about here is that abundance is much more than what's in your bank account. And while it can be about money, I feel abundant, you can feel abundant without actually having a lot of money. It's more of a feeling, okay? And this is huge because it's a feeling that you can fully share your gifts and be who you are. It is a sense of freedom, but it's also a sense of knowing that you're cared for regardless amount of the money that you do have. That kind of back to the first part, you know, that you will be provided for. So a good example is this: a person can have a lot of money and be really wealthy, but actually not be abundant, right? They could have all this money in their bank account, but they could be fearful every day that they're about to lose that money. And that does happen a lot of times. So that could be a wealthy person who's actually not abundant. I think that's an important point to make. And on the same note, a person can also have very little money and feel very abundant, just have a beautiful outlook on life, knowing that he or she is going to be provided for, and having kind of a sense of freedom about who they are, regardless of what that number says. So I just want to use that example. I think that's an important example to make as we think about what abundance means. So what do you guys think of when you think of abundance? What comes through for you? And maybe is it you have a knowing things will work out, you feel taken care of, you're able to both give and receive freely. This is a key part of it as well. If you want to share anything, go ahead. Heather says feeling at peace with life. That's a beautiful way to say it, Heather, right? And right now we can all bring through an abundance mindset, right? We can say, this time will pass. We can live in fear, not knowing what's going to happen, which is very true. But we can also say, there is something greater coming right now, right? So how can we lean into that abundance piece of where we might be right now? Overflowing to give to others, Mary says. Success, Heather says. Yep. Love it. Having what you need. Mm-hmm. All right, Danielle, over to you. What are your thoughts on this symbolic layer?
So when I think about abundance, I picture a basket being full. And I don't know why I picture it with loaves of bread. Maybe it's just because I've been a breadaholic in the past, but I do. I picture this basket and these loaves of bread coming out of it. But abundance for me at times when I have felt deprived or not full, I usually have a gratitude journal. And Sarah Van Brethnack, I hope I've pronounced her name correctly, I learned about her in the early 90s. I read her book, Simple Abundance, and it was really developing a lifestyle of gratitude and joy. And there is a gratitude journal that I would keep. So if you do not have a gratitude journal where you are writing every day, 5 things, and if you don't want to come up with 5, just free flow. I believe journaling is about free flowing. I don't try to have a structure to it, because I think when you're free flowing, it all just kind of reveals itself to you as you just allow your thoughts to go. But if you can choose several things that you can find abundance in an area that you're not feeling deficit. So if you're deficit in finances, then go over to areas where you feel abundant. If your finances are abundant, then go to these other areas that you feel that are depleted. And that will help you kind of balance and see where you truly do have blessings and where you can pull from. Now, I think right now we're in a really unique time, and I hesitate to say that we've been given a gift, because it does not feel like a gift right now. But we have been, the universe, whatever your belief system is, has given us a period of time where they have put the brakes on our life, our busyness, our tendency to just layer and layer and layer. And we have a really unique opportunity that we may not get again, because many of us are working from home. Many of us do not have a packed schedule of kids' activities. And we can use this time to really reflect on where our abundance is in our life. The second piece that I'll add to this is, for me, spirituality is a central theme in abundance. Now, we all have different spiritual beliefs. For me, having my Bible group study, sense of community every week, being able to just know that, I've been provided for by my belief system, that fills my cup when it's depleted. So gratitude journaling, your sense of community, and your spirituality, to me, are the tips that I would give for this symbolic layer.
Well, I'm glad you shared that. It's really interesting because what I like what you shared too is like this idea of doing the gratitude journal and then looking at the other elements of where you feel abundant there too, because that really does, again, we see this interconnection between the elements. It's really huge. Like you mentioned spirituality, that is a big piece in how you feel abundant. So therefore it does impact the finances element. So there's all these things at work. And I think it sounds like it's such a powerful practice to be able to look at all these areas. And especially when we do it, sometimes we do it when we're feeling good. We're like, oh yeah, I got my things I'm grateful for. But to do it consistently, to do it right now, to do it when things don't feel abundant, to find those areas where you are provided for, you do feel abundant right now, and to bring that through. It's huge. It's huge. I know many of you have gratitude practices.
You know, I shared with you before everyone else got on, you know, what I did yesterday. My air and my breathing, my sense of being centered was really being challenged yesterday with working, homeschool, having my daughter, you know, 24/7, just asking me questions, saying my name 1,000 times a day. And I just had to escape the house. And one of the things I did was I went and sat in a parking lot with a barricade of the beach. But I just sat there and I just breathed, and I needed to replenish that for myself, although I have many other areas that I was abundant in the elements and in my life, but that was one that I had to focus on. And then that kind of brought everything else into perspective.
I love that. You had that opportunity. There's an abundance piece right now. You had a car, you could drive to the beach, you could look out. You know, sometimes it can be something really, really simple too. And then it hits you just how powerful that can be. You know, the other piece here I just want to kind of touch before we move on is because I mentioned it a few times and people might be wondering, what am I saying here? And it is an important piece about the element is like this balance of giving and receiving. So when we feel abundant, sometimes we give a lot and we share with others, right? Our cup does feel full, as you said. And oftentimes people do this regardless because it makes them feel abundant. I want to also touch on the fact that over giving from any place can sort of be a way to overcompensate in a way. And I want you to know that receiving is also a sign of abundance too. And it can be very hard, especially for us, for all of us here who are givers and guides and caregivers and helpers and healers, right? We come from a place of giving. But oftentimes that it can be in a lack of abundance if it's not managed properly, if it's coming from a lack, right? So I just want to bring that awareness. That might be something to journal on, to think about as you're doing your journaling or your gratitude practice. Where are you with this balance of giving and receiving, right? Because receiving from others, well, that sometimes feels like, oh, I shouldn't do that. That is a form of bringing abundance. It's really a balance between these two things of giving and receiving. And I wanted to mention that too.
The abundance of receiving that Suzanne's talking about, you're actually providing abundance to someone else to allow them to receive the joy of being able to give to you. Now, I'm a type A personality. I'm very, I want to manage it, be in control of it. And this is very difficult for me to do. But I've been reminded to stop in that moment when I receive from someone else and just go, okay, I'm going to receive it. But the joy on the other person's face is enough to fill both of us at that moment. So I think you're right, Suzanne. It's very important to realize the balance in those two areas and to receive as much as we give.
It's an interesting thing to take a look at, right? When someone says and they're kind of giving or going to give to you, like for many of us, and it can happen a lot for women too, we're like, oh no, we got this, we're under control. In fact, it happened to me just yesterday, right? My husband wanted to make dinner and I was like, well, this is where the food is. No, don't forget that, like, hello, break for me, right? But it was like, no, I can do it kind of thing. And so it's always a constant check with yourself. Can you receive in that moment, right? When someone's offering, and then another level, can you ask for the support when someone isn't offering? And this is like something I really had to learn and I've really struggled with and I still do today, right? You've got all these things going on and can you ask for help? I'll be like, oh my gosh, I really want to ask for help with the dishes right now. But no, I can't do it. I'll like literally hear my voice. Like I can hear myself and I'm like, wait, I've got to do this for myself to show myself right? That I can ask for my needs to be met. That's a component of abundance. So I love what you said, though. It's not just about you, it's about other people too, and where they are. So it can be very beautiful in that process, and seeing how that plays together. What do you guys think about this third layer? What's one action step you're going to say? Is it something that Danielle shared today? Maybe a gratitude journal, taking that moment out for yourself and going for even a 5 or 10 minute drive to fill yourself up? Is it asking for help? Is it thinking about some of these things? I'm curious what you guys are going to do to take action on the symbolic layer of finances. Go ahead, type it in the chat if you'd like. Take a minute. Shelly loves her gratitude journal. It starts her day and sometimes ends it in both. Charlene's going to practice asking for help. Yeah. And Charlene, there may be moments where you don't get the help. You might feel rejected, right? But it's not about that. It's about the fact that you did ask. So be open, because your ego is going to tell you, oh, you're not worthy. That was not, you shouldn't have done that, right? But honor yourself. It's in the asking. Jenna, allow herself to receive more. She has a great support system. She needs to remind herself it's okay to allow them to help you too. Yeah. Yeah, that's huge. Love it, you guys. Let's just take a minute and think again about the Wellness 360 view, right? Because that's what we like to do on this final step, right? When we're working with ourselves or with our clients, we can dive into this inner layer or to these 3 different layers. We can also kind of zoom out. We kind of zoom in and we zoom out. When we zoom out, we're like, okay, how does finances relate to everything else in our life, right? We don't, with Wellness 360, we're never looking at things, challenges or symptoms or anything in a box. And the same is true with finances. It's all interconnected. So can you think of any ways right now that your finances element is impacting other elements of the wheel? Either finances is out of balance and it's impacting them, or kind of vice versa. I'm just curious. Go ahead, type in the element if you'd like. For example, if finance is out of balance, you might feel like, okay, I've got all this stress right now, and maybe it affects the element of food. You start you're like mindlessly eating, right? Because you're just like, oh, I'm trying to feel that abundance from something. Right? Or you have cravings because you have the stress. So like right there, you could tell somebody all day, one of your coaching clients, to eat better and change their food. But if it's coming from the element of finances, that's where you need to be looking, right? That's why we're looking at this interconnection. What's your interconnection? Go ahead, share it with us right now. If anything's coming through, you know what? It could be more subtle. You might feel secure with money right now, but you might have some of these fears about the future, right? And maybe that's affecting your own mindset. Or maybe it's affecting your purpose in life. You can't move forward and put yourself out there because you're afraid that, you're not going to be provided for and you're going to fail, right? So you're like, oh, okay, there's an interconnection. Charlene says finances can clog spirituality. Yeah. Christina says it affects the rest element, sleep. Shelley's the same, rest. Absolutely. Heather has sleep, feeling stuck, same thing. That's a big one for everybody, it sounds like. Yeah, and it's the same thing with your clients, as Danielle was saying before. You can work with the client on the external layer of finances. We're not trying to be financial advisors. That's not our role. We're looking at finances as it affects wellness, right? And if someone's finances are so out of whack, this is where we get to be the guide and we say, hey, maybe you need to talk to someone else about finances. But what we've uncovered is that this area is really out of balance for you and you need more support. Do you see how that is being a guide for someone to get the help that they need? We're not trying to solve every issue here, right? We take them on that journey. So it depends what's coming up. So keep that in mind as you're thinking about coaching your clients. And Danielle, anything else coming through that you want to share in particular?
Just to remember your resilience. I tell people, if you can become comfortable with being uncomfortable, that's where the true growth happens. So every day, do something small to make yourself feel uncomfortable. And that way, when these times of challenges come up and you start to feel that welling up, it's like, ooh, I don't like this space. I don't like the way I'm feeling right now. You know that it is temporary and you'll be able to get over it. The other thing I would share for some of the sleep challenges that's happening, I have found that if I journal later in the evening, I kind of get all of that negative mind chatter out of my head, and I'm able to better rest because I've left it somewhere for the time being. And you can always go back to it and do what you need to work through it. But I do think we have to at times compartmentalize to give ourselves space to breathe.
Yeah, I love that. That sounds like a very empowering practice and thing to do to kind of support yourself. And I put in the chat, become comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? That's really where the magic happens. And all of you know that on some level, because you had to be a little bit uncomfortable to make this step, to be here today, to be on this journey, to be a wellness coach. So I applaud you. And I also ask you to carry that with you as you go through other uncomfortable times. Because right now, here was an example that you were able to do that. And there's going to be other moments, and you kind of keep leveraging your past experiences to keep applying it. So I would love to hear from one person out there about what came through for them on this call, either a breakthrough or one thing they want to do next, or anything that you want to share that's coming up. It's always fun to hear from you guys, and we have time to connect with one person. So all you have to do is raise your hand, see you on video. Oh, I see Charlene out there right away. That's awesome. Yeah. Hey, Charlene.
Hi.
How are you?
Okay?
Yeah, we can.
I'm trying to get my chat away. There we go.
You're perfect.
So I wrote down a whole lot.
That's good.
So I was really actively writing. Couple of things that came through. I'm gonna take one ear out so I don't feel like I'm yelling. Couple of things that came through. The last one was, my biggest thing I wrote down was journal, journal, journal. That was the last thing that just came through to me. I've always been a fan of journaling, but I've never been consistent. So it's kind of gone with the ways of life. Like, if I really take the time for me and to really focus, I'll journal. And then if I put myself aside and I take care of family life, whatever's happening, I don't journal. So I think some things, as I've learned, no matter what, like we're talking about finance, no matter what the element is, it comes back to the journaling and the focusing, whatever that might be, whether it's spirituality, finance, whatever the element is. So that was one big thing I took away. Another one I actually highlighted was to really focus and try to implement from a finance standpoint in our family. My husband and I have different views on finances, all the way from how to save, when to spend, what to spend it on. It's not a thing in our relationship. Fortunately, we've been together a very long time that we've always worked through. So it's not an element in which we argue or anything. Doesn't cause a lot of stress. However, he's a type A personality. And for example, in this element that we're in or this world we're in right now with everything that's happening, he's a doomsday preparer. He likes to prepare for doomsday. He wants to make sure we have a stockpile of money. We have a stockpile of finances available, which is, I am so grateful for, because in this element right now that we're in with everything happening in the world, it has given him the ability to not be stressed over that. However, I'm stressed. It's funny how our roles changed. He went from not being stressed and more comfortable in this situation to me panicking, like, oh my God, what are we going to do? And he's like, Shar, we've prepared ourselves for this day. So I think one thing that I was trying to write down was how to find that balance for myself to where I'm not stressed in a situation where it's a total opposite. We're fortunate. We're very fortunate in this situation at the moment. And so many are not. And I'm stressed for the so many that are not, if that makes any sense, where he's more relaxed and comfortable at the moment. Does that make sense? Like, I don't really know how to explain it other than that. So I definitely was writing down, how do I not be stressed over the fact that we are okay? I don't, it's a weird way to, so I don't know how to explain it, I guess. I don't know if I'm really getting it across, but.
No, you are. It's interesting too. And I'll just say that, first of all, I love that the journaling piece is coming through for you, that you want, you've done it before, it's helpful, you want to keep doing it. I think it's going to bring more through for you on this very topic that you are sharing, right? But because you're a heart-centered person, because you're a caring person, you're coming from, I think I'm hearing two places. One is that no matter how well you're taken care of, your heart is beyond you. It's greater, right? And you're thinking about others. And so and that feels out of control, right? Because we can't really help or do. And so what your ego is telling you is there's a little bit of guilt there. Well, wow, you guys were prepared. You've taken action.
Yeah.
Early. You were prepared for this. All these things happen and you're okay. And guess what? Others may not be, right? So do you feel, is there a sense of guilt there on some level?
There is actually. It's funny you say that, because just last week I was reading something that said what I was actually feeling was grief and guilt versus fear for myself.
Yep.
I was feeling grief and guilt for other people too. So, because like and it might come to a point in this situation where in months down the line, based on what my husband does for a living, we might feel a little impact financially, but we have time to prepare for that where others don't. And again, that's where some of the guilt probably is coming from, is that I'm okay in the moment. And I have time to prepare, and so many other people don't. Even in our own family, like I'm watching, things happen and unfold, and there's nothing I can do to kind of help them along,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think you're probably on the right track with that, with some guilt for sure.
Right. And we could definitely spend more time digging into this, but and I know Danielle has something to share too. But what I will say right now, I think as a next step for you is the journaling. And I think you want to explore right now, how is the guilt serving you? Right?
Okay. I'm writing that down.
How is the guilt serving you? Right. And kind of what is the story around all of this? And you can even use the core coaching method on yourself here too. I think there's some inner work that you could do with that. So try that and just see what comes through. I don't want to give any of the answers or speculation, because I want it to be your own journey, but let us know how things shift for you.
I will. Thank you.
What were you going to say, Danielle? I didn't want to cut you off.
The only thing I was going to add to this is we are very much in the same situation. And I heard guilt just like Suzanne, because I just had this conversation 2 weeks ago. So just Suzanne said, this needs to come through for you. But one of the ways that we have been able to tackle that in our relationship is we have both talked about what it is for us that would make us feel okay in this situation, for my need to give a little and his need to hold on. And that's going to be different for both of you. And the journaling will help you uncover what that is for you and why that guilt is there, and maybe a way that you can satisfy both of your needs during this time.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Because even outside of this time, I hear what you're saying, Danielle, you're looking at how do both needs get met? Because like you said, Charlene, you both have different stories. You both have different upbringing. So aside from this is coming through now as an opportunity. But like you said, this has always been there, right?
Right. So it has. Yep.
Yeah. And that's normal, because we all have different upbringings and patterns and things like that. So being able to look at how each person's needs can be met. And maybe his is, yes, he wants to over prepare. And that's very much a masculine energy, and I don't mean masculine like male or female, right? We all have different energies that are part of us, right? And then there's a feminine energy for you that's a little bit different. And so allowing that to come through, what does that look like for you? And there's an interesting balance there. So I'm so glad that you shared. Thanks for volunteering.
Yeah.
That was really helpful. I know other people are resonating with, what you shared as well, and kind of being in a similar situation. So thank you, Charlene. Well, it's always fun to hear from you guys, both in the chat, and I love when you guys volunteer live. It really helps us to hear a little bit more about what's coming through for you. And this has been awesome. I always say this at the end of the call, but miraculously we end up pretty much right at the top of the hour, which I don't know how it happens. But it was so fun being with everybody today. And I just want to thank you, Danielle, for being here to walk us through this super important element and really taking a closer look at it. It's like we had this little magnifying glass today. That's what I feel is how it was. And I'm just so grateful that you were able to share your insights and stories.
Thank you. It was awesome. So many of you, we've talked in your initial admissions call. So it's really great to see your faces, and, thank you for letting me walk that initial journey with you. And this has been great. Thank you for letting me be here today.
Yeah, it's so fun to see Danielle. We don't always get to see her in videos in the community, because she's out there, right, supporting those in the greater community. So I'm so glad that she got to be here today. Thank you, Danielle, so much for being here. Thanks for everybody for joining us. Go on and out there in the world, take action with your finances element. Keep us posted in Thrive, how things are going for you. And we'll see you in your next Wellness 360 workshop very soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.